Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. 2024, it's been a truly insane election year. Two different Democratic candidates. A Kennedy is supporting the GOP. The Cheneys are supporting the Dems. Two different assassination attempts, at least. And there happens to be a new documentary that tracks it all. And I do mean up close and personally. By following President Donald Trump and providing access few have ever gotten. I mean, you will see him like you have not seen him before. It is called The Art of the Surge, and it's available for subscribers on tuckercarlson.com. Here is some of the trailer.
So we're standing exactly in the path where the president will walk out to the crowd about an hour from now, and there's a malfunction with the flag.
Be careful.
The hood's rocking with Trump. Trump's definitely got the black vote back.
Making America great again.
Donald Trump is the boss. And when you think you're in control, Donald Trump does something that says you're not in control.
You think Biden could do this? I don't think so.
What is the campaign specifically doing differently now?
If there's one word to describe it, it's just execution.
Biden's just taken the stage of the debate.
The standard is not, are you able to stand up for 90 minutes?
I can't even understand him right now.
Trump is like riding a great racehorse, right? You put the blinders on, you guide him into the corners, and you let him run.
Look at how many people are showing up for a rally. Everyone, please, just make sure you're ready. 30 seconds. Let's go, America!
The president's been shot. I repeat, the president's been shot.
Oh my gosh, I've got chills. Joining me now, my pal Tucker Carlson, host of The Tucker Carlson Show, which you can find on all platforms. Don't forget, it's tuckercarlson.com to see The Art of the Surge. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Do you owe back taxes? Are your tax returns still unfiled? Did you forget to file for an extension? The October 15th deadline is basically here. And time's running out, my friends. If you have not gathered all your documents or made any estimated payments, you could soon be on the wrong end of the IRS. And after October 15th, the IRS can garnish your wages, freeze your bank account, seize your property. It's not good, suffice it to say. But there is help available. Tax Network USA, a nationwide tax firm, has helped taxpayers save more than $1 billion in tax debt. They have filed over 10,000 tax returns and assisted thousands in reducing their tax burdens. And they can help you too. Don't wait. Visit tnusa.com/Megyn or call 1-800-958-1000. Okay, so it's tnusa.com/Megyn or call 1-800-958-1000 for a free consultation. They'll guide you through a few simple questions to determine how much you can save and take action now before it's too late, right? Visit tnusa.com/Megyn or call 1-800-958-1000. Tucker, great to see you. Well done.
Thank you, Megyn. I mean, there's so much, and thanks for having me. There's so much pageantry with Trump. I mean, not just the public events, but like at dinner, meetings. I mean, everything is a show. And I guess you either appreciate it or you don't. But those of us who do appreciate it, just almost like on an aesthetic level, it's cool to see it. I mean, it doesn't stop. I mean, obviously you spent a lot of time with Trump and you know this, but it's kind of the same backstage as it is on stage. And to see it all laid out like this, you know, over a period of months is pretty cool, I think.
Well, it's amazing because you and your Fox EP, Justin Wells, embark on this project in June, and you're not thinking you're going to have the kind of summer that we had. I mean, how could you possibly have been envisioning anything that happened? And yet, you know, you're up close and personal for the most bizarre, compelling, interesting, consequential election in U.S. history, at least one of them, modern history, I think it's fair to say, especially that debate in which Biden collapsed and the assassination attempt, the one where he was shot. I mean, you and Justin had to be behind the scenes like, oh my God, Oh, wow.
Well, it was unbelievable. I mean, I was not there for the debate. I mean, I really wasn't there for much of it at all. But the camera was there. My personal favorite so far, so we've got 3 episodes up. I think I've got 4 and 5 are coming, and it goes to 6. But is the reaction shot backstage during the debate of all the VIPs who've been accompanying Trump, members of Congress, watching Joe Biden melt down on stage. And these are people who do politics for a living and know Biden personally and are sort of like have what they think is going to happen in mind. And what actually happens is so shocking to them that it's truly unscripted. Like you just can't. They're sitting there with just jaws agape. They can't believe this guy is melting down the way that he is. Yeah. It's really an amazing
We have
moment.
it.
But the whole thing,
let's watch a little bit of that because it is amazing. Like when I watched it and I had the same reaction. Of course, we were all having the same reaction in our homes, but to see Team Trump and others backstage watching it as we did is something else entirely. Watch it. Here it is.
Biden does not sound good right now, so we'll see.
Make sure that we reduce the price of housing to $15 for a insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they conclude beginning next year. His debt, we'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
OMG.
It's crazy. If you saw that live, as everyone did, you think, well, is it just me or was that the most profound failure like ever captured on film? And then you watch people who do this for a living, Lindsey Graham, Tim Scott, JD Vance, Laura Trump. They're like,
Ben Carson.
They stop. Ben Carson, he stops in mid-bite looking at this. I just love that. And there's a
Laura
lot like
Trump
that. But
speaks for us all when she mouths WTF. Like, it's what we all felt.
I like her. But you said in your open so nicely. It was. But you said this is a year where Kennedy has endorsed Trump and Dick Cheney has endorsed Kamala Harris. I mean, that just kind of sums it up right there. Not just the obvious drama, the meltdown, Biden dropping out, the assassination attempts on Donald Trump, but just the total realignment in the most obvious, undeniable way of American politics, where Bobby Kennedy is on the campaign trail for Donald Trump and Dick Cheney and his daughter are working for Kamala Harris. I mean, like, who could have predicted that? Nobody.
I know, right. And I mean, what better recommendation for Trump and not for Kamala than to see the world divide in that way? I mean, it is kind of amazing, is it not, Tucker, to see the Cheneys now be lionized by this Democrat Party? And I mean, it's so dishonest. At least she was asked, Kamala was asked, who was it? It was asked about the Liz Cheney endorsement on Meet the Press. It was, who was it, Steve, who was asked about it? The Liz Cheney endorsement. It was Kristen Welker. But in any event, it's like, she was asking Liz Cheney. That's what it was. She had Liz Cheney just the other day. And she's like, you said a lot of terrible things about Kamala just a few short years ago. People might be left with the impression you're kind of insincere, right? That's not really going to be the takeaway. But does the Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney combo change the calculation here?
Well, I mean, it just puts it into stark relief, as you just said correctly, I think. And it also raises questions for me personally as someone who defended Dick Cheney for, 25 years in public and always got the sense maybe there's something wrong with Dick Cheney. And why would you be so enthusiastic about shooting down a civilian airliner, as he famously was on 9/11? And, just the cost of these wars in human life was so high. Doesn't that bother you? And I kind of pushed all those thoughts into the back of my mind and didn't deal with them, but they always did bother me on a gut level. And I asked the other night, I was with Russell Brand, who I love, and I said to him, you kind of called this early. What about Dick Cheney made you uncomfortable 20 years ago that I missed? And he just said, he just seemed a bit evil. But, you know, that's kind of true. And I just felt shame for ignoring that. I mean, it's like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons with Dick Cheney. It's like not a tough call. You don't need to be super spiritually aware to get an evil whiff off Dick Cheney. And I just refused to see it. And so I just want to apologize for that.
Well, I mean, I don't know how well this is going to do for her. She's got some 9% reportedly of Republican vote, like some sort of share of Republicans is going to go for Kamala Harris. But are these real Republicans? And these are probably the Nicole Wallaces, the Joe Scarboroughs, you know, of the world. These are not actual Republicans. I predict, and I think you'll agree with me, notwithstanding the number of Republicans, even that work for Trump, that are now endorsing Kamala, the Republican Party will come home to Trump just as it did in 16 and 20.
I think that's right. I mean, certainly Republican voters are foursquare behind Trump. And by the way, they know Trump and they know all of his shortcomings very, very well. They know them really well in the same way you do of, like, you know, your favorite cousin. It doesn't mean you don't love your cousin, but you know exactly who your cousin is. They know who Trump is. They're not deluded. They don't think he's God. But they do think he's the one politician who doesn't hate them. And that's the basis of their requited love for him. But what's interesting is that I think a huge percentage of the Republican leadership in Washington is going to vote for Kamala Harris, whether they say so or not. Mitch McConnell is voting Kamala Harris. I mean, there's just no question about it. The Bushes are voting Kamala Harris. Oh, for sure. Are you kidding? Absolutely.
Well, I guess
I bet money on it. Yeah, but I just think there are a lot of Republican senators, for example, whose beliefs are much closer to Kamala Harris's than they are to Trump's or to the Republican electorate.
Well, that's what Liz Cheney was saying when trying to justify herself. I'll play the soundbite when she went on with Kirsten Welker, SOT 73.
Back in 2020, you said Kamala Harris, when she was announced as President Biden's running mate, you called her a radical liberal whose policies, quote, are completely inconsistent with what most Americans believe in and stand for. I know that you don't view this as a policy election. You've been very clear about that. But are there policies that Kamala Harris supports that you also back?
Absolutely. And I would say the extent to which, you know, she and I certainly have had our disagreements. But when you look at the whole range of issues, for example, with respect to support for Ukraine, with respect to the fact that, you know, she is saying that the United States has to lead in the world, Donald Trump is embracing tyrants.
Do you regret any of the language that you used to describe Harris and Biden at the time? They would dismantle our freedom, destroy our history, the type of language you're using now about Donald Trump?
Look, I think certainly those were harsh things that I said. I think that they reflect absolutely that we had a policy disagreement on a series of issues. But I also think that's why it's so important for people to focus on the fact that I am supporting her now.
You nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't care about any of that stuff. I mean, her behavior on the January 6th commission shows she doesn't care about your freedoms, obviously. She put innocent people, allowed them to go to jail, and suppressed information that was exculpatory. She did that. So she's on Kamala Harris's page with that. The truth is, it's about control. That's it. Kamala Harris is a blank slate. She doesn't care. She's policy agnostic. She's what she needs to be. I don't think she's a radical anything other than an opportunist. And everyone in Washington senses that. Can you control her? Of course. Her boss, senile. Can you control him? Yes. Donald Trump, who's not some right-winger, by the way, at all, he's on the moderate side of the spectrum on policy, is not controllable by anybody. And that's either good or bad, you know, depending on your perspective. But if you seek to control politicians, which is what Liz Cheney's business really is, and Dick Cheney's business really is, it's not going to work with Trump. So that's why they hate him. That's why they embraced Kamala. That's why they embraced her boss, Joe Biden, because they're weak. That's the point. They're weak. It is not about an individual issue. Kamala Harris will be whatever she needs to be. I'm not attacking her, by the way. It's a pretty good strategy if, you know, for advancement, for a low-skilled person to rise to where she has. Not easy, and she's done it on the basis of moral flexibility. And Trump just doesn't have that. Like, Trump will make an agreement. You know, you can blackmail Trump. You know, you got to do this. But there's no guarantee that he won't just blurt it out. I remember in the debates in 2016, he gets attacked for knowing Hillary Clinton. And he's like, yeah, well, they actually, paid me money to go to her wedding. So I went. I mean, he just sort of he breaks the fourth wall. He says the quiet part out loud. That is such a threat to a corrupt system. That's the point. It's not that he's, going to bring fascism or destroy democracy. It's the opposite. He might accidentally tell the truth, and they have to stop him before he does.
Well, you didn't pay taxes. That makes me smart. I'm smart. That was so smart. It wound up in a Dave Chappelle skit honoring him for being, this guy who actually did resonate with people sitting at home. Like, finally, somebody who tells it like it is.
Well, exactly. And if you put enough pressure on Trump, he might intentionally or not just say so. Like, well, Donald Trump, you changed your view on this. Why? Well, because they threatened me. You might say that. Kamala Harris will go to her grave with all of that stuff hidden. And so that's why they like Kamala Harris. And Liz Cheney is telling the truth when she says it's not about policy. It's not about an individual policy. It's about all policies. And of course, what the Cheneys and permanent Washington really cares about is war, because it's the ultimate exercise of power, killing people. And it's where the money is.
The only thing she mentioned.
So it's the only thing she cares about. Trust me, I know her well. And that's the only thing she cares about. And back when she and her dad and the many like them ran the Republican Party, they dressed it up as we're strong, on defense, or we're keeping the world safe. Well, of course, they've made the world much more chaotic and infinitely more dangerous. We're on the brink of nuclear war right now because of their policies and their, quote, leadership. So it doesn't make anybody safe. It imperils everybody, including our children. And the gig is up for them. They can no longer pretend. People on both sides are sick of pointless forever wars. I mean, I do think that's really obvious. People are sick of it. And she's mad that they're sick of it, but,
But this is such an interesting way, and I always learn something talking to you, Tucker. You always give me a different way of thinking about issues, because I've been saying she's a moron, which I do think she's a moron. I stand by that. But when I watch these completely empty sound bites, I think it's because she's dumb and she doesn't know anything and she's incapable of doing anything more. And your words, blank slate, kind of come at it from a different way, that she's intentionally being vague all the time because that's what makes her saleable to her party bosses who have chosen her and who are trying to elevate her to advance their own agenda. In the case of Cheney and so many others, it is wars, the military-industrial complex. And that is a different way of looking at, I'll play the soundbite, we played it a couple days ago, but this one just is so perfect. It just encapsulates everything that I can't stand about how she answers questions. I'm going to look at this with a new pair of eyes, just blank slate as opposed to just utter moron. Let's watch it.
How do we get here? You smell good, you look good.
Oh, that's better than smelling bad. Thank you.
I know. You smell great, you look great. Do you feel great? Kind. It has been a whirlwind for you.
I feel good. Listen, we have 23 days as of today until the election, and I am in these streets traveling and talking with folks. And I am out here doing the work of earning then the vote so that we can get to the job of continuing to move forward. And for me, that is about pushing for an opportunity economy, which is about tapping into the ambitions and the aspirations of folks. Oh. I know the ambitions, the aspirations, the incredible work ethic that exists in our community. I know the dreams that exist, but not everyone has started out on the same base in terms of being able to realize their goals and their dreams. So my plan is to build what I call an opportunity economy, which means giving people an opportunity to actually achieve those ambitions, those goals, and those dreams.
She said nothing.
Yeah, which isn't easy, by the way. It's not easy to say nothing. It's not easy to be Kamala Harris. It's not easy. Everything about her, from her first name, which she's pronounced various different ways. She doesn't pronounce her own first name consistently, to her accent, which is, of course, an affect. She grew up in Canada. She's Canadian. She went to high school in Montreal, Canada. She didn't grow up in Baltimore. That's a completely fake accent, daughter of college professors. To everything that she believes, which is essentially nothing. And to play that role over so many years with nothing inside is not an easy thing. I don't think she's stupid. I think there are different kinds of intelligence. I think she's a high feral intelligence, an animal intelligence, which is a really useful thing. I wish I had more of it myself. I mean that. but she's just pure ambition, and she'll be what she needs to be. But when I watch that, every time I watch her, I get the same vibe, which is fear. She's afraid. And of course she's afraid because she doesn't believe anything. When you know and you believe what you believe, and if you have limits to what you'll say, to how dishonest you'll be, there's a kind of freedom in that. Like, I'm not going to do that, period. I've already decided. All of us kind of go through this. But there's the rare person, not so rare in politics, unfortunately, she's one of them, who doesn't have any limits at all. And because, whatever it takes, whatever I have to say, whatever I have to pretend to believe, I will. And again, that's a skill. And that's how she leveraged a career with no achievement at all, no obvious skills of any kind, to the place where she could be president of the United States. Try that at home. That's hard. So I do give her credit for that. I think it's been a really difficult, super unpleasant, joyless journey with no real personal relationships, a husband who she kisses with a mask on. Imagine living that life. Seriously. I can't imagine anything worse than that.
That's the least of the problems with the husband. I mean, the husband's got serious issues, which honestly, it's driving me insane.
Can I ask you what you think of that?
Yeah, I believe every word of it.
Of the Emhoff stories? Yeah, I do too.
Yes, so first of all, we know that he cheated on the first wife and impregnated the child's nanny. So it's bad enough to cheat on your wife. Then you cheat with the child's nanny. So you're jeopardizing an important relationship in the child's life, right? Presumably, the nanny matters to the child, and you're about to blow up your marriage. So some stability with the caretaker would be nice, but you're screwing that up too because you're screwing the nanny. Then he impregnates her. Then on top of that, the Daily Mail, all of which he's admitted that. Then on top of that, the Daily Mail comes out with a second report saying he bragged to his next girlfriend that he made the nanny sign an NDA and paid her $80,000 to stay quiet because, or at least in connection with this, she lost the baby under circumstances that she blames him for. We don't know exactly what happened, but the Daily Mail reports that there was an emergency at the nanny's home, that EMTs were called, and that it was a serious emergency. And after this, she blames him for losing the baby that he impregnated her with. This is all behind the back of the first wife. So then, in that second report, the Daily Mail reveals, this he hasn't admitted to, that he found a girlfriend in 2012, 18 months before he met Kamala, and they were in Cannes, France at some red carpet, black tie event, and for AIDS, to raise money for AIDS research. She's a gunner, this woman. She's a professional, she's a lawyer, she's beautiful. They were dating for a short time. She brings him out there. And that he was so angry, she touched the shoulder of a valet to get his attention so she could get a taxi. He open hand slapped her so hard across the face, she spun, she stumbled, she got into a taxi because now she's scared. He forced his way in. She was so scared of the beating continuing, she called her male friend back in New York to get him on the phone so that he couldn't do anything to her now. She's got an ear witness. That guy spoke to the Daily Mail, as did two of her other friends, at least one of whom was able to give a contemporaneous account of what she was told. The second one came a year later, I think. And this woman broke up with him and provided receipts, obviously, that came from the woman. How else would the friends have her airline tickets? And that he denies only through a campaign spokesperson in passive terms. So he's denied it. I believe every word. Because you know what would happen, Tucker. You're a public figure. If somebody came out and said, Tucker Carlson beat the girlfriend he had before he married Susie, you would very easily produce said girlfriend to say, this is a vicious lie. I love Tucker. It ended, but we're friends. Or it ended badly, but he never hit me. Where is she? If it didn't happen, and he's had 3 interviews so far, including with MSNBC, which is supposed to be a news organization, no one has asked a question about it.
I don't understand that. How can you not ask about that? I mean, I'm not surprised at all because he's a self-described feminist who's redefining masculinity, and people like that always hate women. It's the beta males you got to watch out for. They will mistreat you. They have no self-respect. And anyone who doesn't respect himself is definitely not going to respect you. That's for certain. They always lash out. I'm a man. I've seen this dynamic a lot. It was always, the peace, love, patchouli guys in college who would rough up their girlfriends. It's a fact. No, for real. And so it doesn't shock me. What shocks me is that Joe Scarborough could do an interview with him and literally not mention it. I just think there's no kind of depth to their shame either. Like, these are the same people who told us that Biden was a genius, not senile at all, and that it was a cheap fake, the evidence to the contrary, and that all of us were right-wing extremists for suggesting Biden was senile, until the day that they all, as one, told us he was in fact senile and had to step down. Like, they're exposed liars. They have no shame, but it still shocks me.
Speaking of no shame, so now Kamala, struggling in the polls mightily, is out there actually trying to make an issue of Trump's medical records, suggesting he's old and he hasn't produced all of his medical records. And therefore, what do we know what we're getting? Do we have somebody who's really together? He doesn't seem okay. Of all people, Tucker, I mean, the nerve, it's flabbergasting.
Yeah. But it's always the way. They always accuse you of exactly what they're doing. I mean, they literally will build wind farms to kill endangered species, whether in the sea, right whales, or California condors, and then yell at you about how you don't care about the environment. You're not worried enough about carbon, dioxide emissions because, you've got a wood stove or a Suburban, but they're flying private and lecturing you. So this is like the main way they communicate, which is by transferring their guilt onto the innocent. But it's every time, I agree with you, it shocks me. Anyway.
On that front, I don't know if you saw the other day, Chris Rufo dropped a bomb on the Kamala Harris campaign because he found she plagiarized multiple times in her book that she released years ago to try to seem like a tough on crime prosecutor. And surprise, surprise, she and her ghostwriter, and we don't know who wrote what, but ultimately it's her book, it's her name, she promoted it, and she hasn't disavowed it, is repeatedly plagiarizing other people's work without attribution. And so what do we get? Do we get the rest of the media saying, well, this is serious, we have to apply the same standard to her as we do across the board? Didn't they try to have Monica Crowley, our friend, booted from the Trump administration because they said she plagiarized a couple lines here or there, which she denied? Okay, with Kamala Harris, totally different story. It's a nothing burger. And the headline truly was like, conservative activist seizes on some sort of minor dust up about her book. It was a way they could say they'd cover it. They'd covered it without actually covering it. And they spend the entire body of the piece trying to minimize the controversy, misrepresent what Rufo actually broke, say he only found a couple of instances, 500 words, where in fact he had found thousands and thousands of words. I mean, you're not surprised, but it's just another example of the double standard.
Well, you're the criminal for noticing. How dare you notice what I'm doing? I mean, it's just a different level of lying. I mean, we all lie, and I hate lying, and I don't want to lie, but I guess if you caught me doing something super embarrassing, I would lie about it. I wouldn't want to, but I would. But what I wouldn't do is accuse you of doing the thing you caught me doing. I would never do that, because that's completely evil. That's not ordinary lying. That's pathological. Do you know what I mean? Like you catch me beating a woman in the face, like Doug Emhoff, apparently just been caught doing that, assaulting a woman in the face. By the way, who would hit a woman in the face? I don't even know anyone who would do that.
Thank you.
Honestly, I mean, I know some pretty sick people. I lived in Washington my whole life. I've been in the media since 1991. And with the exception of a few, Joe Scarborough or what, I mean, but I just don't know anyone who's capable of that. That's a really weird behavior, in my opinion. So what is his response? To lecture you about how you don't care about women's rights. You don't care about women. Really? I'm not the one who was like busted hitting a woman in the face. It's like crazy behavior. Not normal.
Yeah, no, it's not normal at all. Well, this is what we're about to elect into our White House, potentially. Although, what do you think? I don't think it's going well. I know I don't picture you as a day-to-day poll consumer, but it doesn't seem to be going very well. Otherwise, she wouldn't be going on Fox News and maybe even Rogan.
Yeah, right. I mean, what's funny, I just was reading this. They're talking to Rogan's people. Well, I mean, I don't know that does Rogan have people? Not that I'm aware. Right. I think you just text Rogan, right? So I don't think there's like an army of people between Kamala Harris's appearance and going to Austin and sitting with Joe Rogan. I think she could probably pull that off this afternoon just by getting on a plane. I don't think it's hard. And I don't think, I'm not good at predictions, try not to make him, but I think there's roughly a 0% chance she goes on Joe Rogan. in that range. I mean,
interesting.
I don't know the name of the guy who was just interviewing her, was asking her, not even questions, just being like, oh, you're so beautiful. Is it hard being so beautiful and you smell good? That guy, she looked afraid in that interview. Can you imagine sitting down with Rogan? I mean, Rogan be like, what's your position on speech? I mean, there's for 3 hours, I don't think there's any possibility she doesn't. Of course, I pray that she does. I think the rest of us deserve that. And by the way, maybe she's amazing. Maybe at the end of 3 hours, I want to vote for her. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to be open-minded here. But don't voters deserve a chance, especially with the candidate who's never been elected to the position she holds, which is nominee? Don't we deserve a chance to hear her talk for 3 hours? I mean, once?
I'm not sure my tender heart could take that, Tucker. I'm not sure I can handle that 3 hours.
But I don't think she could handle it.
But you're right, because the open-ended question would be the most dangerous for her. And that's what Rogan does. I mean, on Fox, she'll get pressed by Brett, but it'll be a short interview. She isn't giving him a lot of time. Totally. But if she ever went on Rogan, he wouldn't accept her if she didn't do it on his terms. She needs him. Exactly. He doesn't need her. So it would have to be lengthy, and it would have to be open-ended. And the open-ended question where you can ask follow-ups would be truly deadly to her.
Well, I completely agree. And from a lifetime of doing them, cable news interviews are pretty easy to game. It's pretty easy to deflect during the course of a cable news interview, no matter how good, and no one was tougher than you in adversarial interviews on cable news. But even you could be defeated just by the structure, by the time limit. If you can put off an answer for just a few minutes in a normal cable news interview, you can get away with it. You cannot do that in a 3-hour format, no matter who is asking the questions. But I think she's kind of foolish, or her staff is foolish, even to start the conversation about going on Rogan, because then the question becomes, well, what does Rogan think of this? Did she really reach out? I mean, at some point she's going to have to turn him down, and I don't think that helps her at all. And also, it is a kind of, the point of this, of course, is men. All men, particularly black men. She's hemorrhaging among black men, famously. And she's looking at men who were almost half the population as just like another interest group to be, pandered to. So she just did the interview with that ridiculous character. You just played the clip. And she starts talking about the community. And I'm like, what community? She's not part of any community that I'm aware of. What is she even talking about? Of course, she's talking about the black community. And she's playing, the Kamala from the streets. Or she even said, I've been on the streets. Okay, with your one rally a day. I don't think you've been on many streets. But that's kind of ticking the box. Okay, I've got problems with black voters. Let's do the black guy show. I've got problems with men. Let's do Rogan
Justin
show.
Carter.
Yeah. It's so kind of patronizing, paint by numbers, 1980s politics. It's so kind of out of touch, I guess, is what I would say. And again, I'm not being mean. I'm not attacking her. I'm not calling her a communist or anything. I'm just saying, I think she's really out of touch. I don't think she is at ease with herself, and therefore totally ill at ease with everybody else, really, is what's happening. And I don't know. I don't think this helps her. Even talking about Rogan helps her at all.
You mentioned how she, has a way of turning around on you, what she does. The Democrats in general do this. And yes. There's been no better example of this than the constant, Trump's going to weaponize the DOJ against his enemies, which we hear every day. She's now amped that up into a campaign ad because Trump, when asked by, for example, Maria Bartiromo, about Biden's claim that we're likely to see chaos around the election. And he was saying it'll be MAGA that causes it. And Maria was saying, what do you think? And Trump said, it won't be from my people if we see chaos on election day. And he said, but if there's chaos, then we're going to take care of it. If that requires the National Guard, then it requires the National Guard or even military. We're not going to have that around here. Now it's been changed by Kamala Harris and Tim Walz into, he will send the military to your home if you vote for me. That's what Trump is promising, that anyone who doesn't vote for him is going to be arrested by the National Guard or by the military or by the police. And this takes me back to the assassination attempts. Not saying that the Democrats were behind them, but certainly that second guy was not a Trump voter. That first guy seemed like a nutcase, but we don't know the full story on guy number one, the guy who actually managed to shoot Trump. It's been kept from us. And I just want to take it back to the documentary for a minute, because this is an extraordinary piece of access. Justin Wells was there. He was there in Butler when Trump was shot, when Corey Comparatori lost his life. And we showed on this program, Selena Zito, great Pennsylvania reporter, on the ground, not hurt, but in the moment when people were being hurt. And Justin was in that scrum and got incredible footage that I'd never seen before of Trump after the fact. Here is a little bit of that from, this is episode 2 of Art of the Surge, and a clip of post the Butler assassination attempt.
And look what happened to our country. Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart.
Really chilling stuff. And I mean, Justin must have been in danger there too, obviously. But it's just very rich, Tucker, to hear the Democrats talk about like the danger Trump poses.
I'm just so grateful that Justin and the camera crew was there. The editor on this, Neil Edelstein, put it together because I think it exists, I hope for all time, as a documentary record of what happened, because that event has been memory holed completely. I mean, that was fairly recently, very recently. There's been no systematic effort to explain, understand, rectify why the Secret Service allowed that shooter, which they did. They allowed it, intentionally or not, on the roof of that building, less than 150 yards away. And the entire event has just sort of disappeared from the public consciousness. And it really matters. It matters like really more than anything that's happened in the last year. The use of violence against a public figure, the Republicans' presidential candidate, was allowed. And I'm not surprised by it, because this is a group that fetishizes violence. It's one of the reasons they were so happy to welcome the Cheneys into their fold. It's why they have systematically, over the past 15 years, armed the federal agencies in a way that doesn't make any sense at all. How much ammunition have the federal agencies ordered, including, the EPA, the IRS? These are not law enforcement agencies. These are not military agencies. Why are they ordering massive amounts of ammunition? To be used against whom? Well, they're domestic agencies, so against American citizens. That's the only answer. So why have they politicized not simply the military, not simply the FBI, the DHS, all the intel agencies? Every armed agency has been systematically brought under the control of the Democratic Party. What is that? Well, that's a distinct focus on violence, on the use of force against other American citizens. And now, apparently, there has been an order from the agencies that would allow the U.S. military to use violence against American citizens. I think that's a fact. So, what would explain that? And again, what explains it, the thread that connects all of this, the assassination attempt on Trump, the support for totally pointless foreign wars, whose only effect is to kill people, it's not to advance the ball for the United States in any sense, just to kill people, and then the arming of the federal agencies, it is a fixation on the use of violence for its own sake. And that's not the right doing that. And they can call you a Nazi or a fascist or whatever, use whatever language they want against you. But the truth is, if you judge people by the things that they do, by their actions rather than their words, the violence is coming overwhelmingly from one side, and the threats of violence from one side. And I don't think they can obscure that. I mean, I think what I'm saying is not partisan. I think it's a fair representation of reality that anyone who's been paying attention has watched for 15 years.
It's really scary. And the nerve.
It is scary.
The absolute nerve to hear her talk about Trump as the threat, and he's the threat to our country, to our democracy. It's like, okay, literally, we've seen the man almost killed twice, at least twice. Yes. Still figuring out what happened that third time. And there's been absolutely no accountability by the Democrats for the incendiary rhetoric around it, for really just ginning people up into a fever around this man. He's still unsafe We don't have a full accounting for what happened either time, but especially time number one, where he actually did take a bullet. And there's no rolling back of any of their messaging. I mean, they're now that she's really panicking, Tucker, and she is panicking, she's getting worse. Like, she's getting more irresponsible. So is Walz. So are their surrogates. I mean, they're really putting him in even more danger. And we do have 3 weeks to go. I mean, obviously, if Trump wins, I think they'll at that point ramp up the Secret Service. But it's still not at maximum levels right now. And you have to wonder whether it's by design.
Well, no one's been fired. I don't understand that. I mean, I've never understood that in all the years I spent 1985 to 2020 living in D.C. in the District of Columbia. I never understood this, and I always resented it, that there were no consequences for failure, whether it was at scale, kill 1 million people in the Iraq War, help the United States not at all, hurt the United States profoundly, same in Afghanistan, same in Libya, same in Syria. I mean, that's just at the scale of war. That's not even counting all the federal programs that not only didn't work, but hurt people, aggressively hurt people. And not one person is ever punished. And I just don't understand. Like, that's not how you raise your children. It's not how any business works. It's not how life works. You have to force people to take responsibility for the bad things they do, or else you will get a whole lot more bad things. That's the most obvious lesson of just being alive. And the fact
what
that
do they say? What you permit, you promote.
That's exactly right. Weirdly, I've never heard that phrase, but I
got it from my mom.
Now on. Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so in upstate New York in the 70s, like, they were on this.
A lot of wisdom.
A lot of wisdom, and that's very obvious.
Also, there was stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
Did she actually say that?
Of course. I was the 70s.
That's so old school. I love that. Good for her.
She cared. That's the important
thing.
Go,
Mrs. Kelly.
No, my favorite was the sign on our kitchen cupboard, which read, lack of planning on your part does not justify an emergency on my part, which that was another truism. Isn't this explaining a lot?
Oh, I just love that. Well, she sounds like an absolutely awesome person who prepared her children for a productive and happy life, which begins with admitting your role in the disaster. And one of the things I hate doing, but force myself to do in my life, public and private, is if I make a mistake, I just want to say I made a mistake. I hate doing that, but the second you do it, it's taking out a splinter. You've repented, your conscience is a little bit clearer, your credibility is much higher with the people around you, and you can move on. And by the way, you learn something in the process. It's only when you admit, every time I get fired, I always go through this. Your first instinct is to blame everybody else. You know, everyone else did something bad. But then at a certain point, you have to say, what did I do wrong? And the second you admit what you did wrong, then you become better and you feel lighter. And it's not about blaming other people. It's about moving forward with cheerfulness. And they never do that. Very simple human exercise in Washington. And in this case, allowing the Secret Service to get away with what happened in Butler Township this summer is insane. That's insane because the message is really obvious. This is a politicized agency that can't be trusted. Oh, by the way, they're your bodyguards. Who can live in a system like that? Nobody can.
No, it was like Eric Prince said, I could have the president secured this afternoon. You know, if you gave it to a private contractor who didn't have the problems that the Secret Service does, but that's not how things work. So she's been in trouble lately for going on very friendly forums like The View and not understanding how to answer the very basic question of what makes you different from Joe Biden? What would you have done anything differently than what he did? And she says, no, I'm right on board with Joe Biden's agenda. I was there for everything. And that's the wrong answer, of course. She should at least, in my view, acknowledge the massive immigration problems. I mean, I just feel like the economy, if I were Kamala, I'd probably still be arguing, it's great, just wait for it. Fine. I mean, that's what a politician would do. But you cannot ignore what is happening with the massive amount of illegal immigration coming to a city near you with, whether it's a Venezuelan gang infesting your apartment complexes or Springfield, Ohio, with a bunch of Haitians who are tearing apart the grocery store and killing people with their hit and runs. It's coming to a city near you or already has. She won't. Yeah. And she's gone a different way where she won't acknowledge any distance between them or any mistakes whatsoever. And I really think it's hurting her. This brings up Dave Portnoy, who is a man who she would like to get because he's definitely pro-choice. He went on a tear like a year ago about how the Republican Party, you can't vote for them because they're pro-life and they don't get it. It was post-Dobbs. He seems to be sounding a little different these days because he's not picking up what Kamala Harris is putting down. Listen here.
And it's the gaslighting that the left is doing with Kamala Harris, making it sound like she's some great, groundbreaking candidate. She is the worst candidate to ever run for president ever. There's two people voting in this election. Either you're voting for Donald Trump, you like Donald Trump, or you hate Donald Trump and you're voting against him. But Kamala Harris, let's stop it. And what put this over the edge for me? Last week, I'm watching her campaign rally, and she's up there being like, we need to turn the page in America. It's time for a new way forward, and I'm your candidate for change, and they're hooting and hollering. This is the sitting vice president of the United States currently saying she's the candidate for change. She is the worst presidential candidate in the history of American politics, honestly. Now, if you still want to vote for her because you hate Trump that much and you can't stand him, you think he's all this evil shit, do it. But stop the gaslighting, please. The footage is there. She can't answer simple questions. If you have any issues with the last 4 years, that's her.
What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, it was, I think, entirely inevitable. I mean, Dave's obviously very smart. He's not a conservative or a Republican or anything, but his instincts are, sort of no BS. He's an entrepreneur, very successful one, but he also has a huge audience / constituency of young men who are really the people of the kind that Kamala Harris, hates most. And a lot of this just comes down to subverbal cues. Like, why do working class people of all colors, by the way, like Donald Trump? Because they sense that in the end, he kind of likes them. He doesn't hate them anyway. He doesn't have contempt for them. You know what I mean? If you've got two personal bankruptcies and are, making child support payments and are between jobs, do you really think Donald Trump's like, you deserve it. Hope you starve to death. Donald Trump's like, no, I get it. You know what I mean? I understand how hard life is. Your, nephew ODs on fentanyl. You think Donald Trump's going to be like, oh, druggie? He's going to be like, man, that's awful that there's fentanyl in this country. He has like a gut level sympathy for struggling Americans. You think Kamala Harris does? I'm not even need to make the case. Like, watch Kamala Harris. Do you think that a single Barstool Sports fan has, the love of Kamala Harris? Are you joking? No. Kamala Harris's base is the guy who just interviewed her in that bizarre little clip that you played. That's who really loves Kamala Harris because she smells good. So I just think she should just hope that there are a lot more of that guy than there are Barstool Sports consumers in this country because, in the end, if you feel that somebody hates you, you're not going to vote for that person. I just don't think you are.
It doesn't matter what state you reside in. It doesn't matter if you live in the suburbs or if your home is in a rural area. Bidenomics has had a negative effect on many aspects of our lives. Gas has gone up an insane 51%. Rent is up 22%. Groceries up 22% higher than before Biden took office. Electricity is up a whopping 32%. Some Americans are having to make tough choices as a result. Do they pay to fill up their gas tanks to get to work, or do they buy their kids new school supplies? Do they pay to heat and cool their homes, or do they buy groceries for their family? This is not easy. These are the very real problems Bidenomics has caused, and it's why Club for Growth is fighting for pro-growth policies that can allow our economy to flourish. Text GROW to 60967 to learn more. Again, that's GROW to 60967. You've been very typically self-deprecating, but one thing I think we both know you were right about, and the world is starting to see it, is JD Vance as Trump's running mate. You saw it, you advocated for it, it was the right call, and it was obvious to anybody who knew JD Vance why it was the right call. And boy, has he proven himself on the campaign trail. I mean, have you been so impressed with him? I've been so, whatever the highest expectations we had were, he's exceeded them.
Well, it's been a thrill because I'm not friends with many politicians, basically zero. But JD Vance I am friends with for reasons having nothing to do with politics. I just really like JD Vance and his wife, and I think he's like a normal, really smart guy. And I think he understands that our foreign policy, it's complicated, and everyone makes compromises, et cetera. A lot of forces at work, blah blah blah. But ultimately, what we've done abroad over the past 20 years has not helped the United States or anybody else. And he just has said that obvious truth. And that resonated with me. It's really important. And I cannot overstate how much donors disliked JD Vance this summer in July when he was chosen. He was chosen the Monday of the Republican convention. And up until the wire, till that moment, Trump was getting calls from his biggest donors saying, don't do this. Lindsey Graham that morning was telling Trump that JD Vance was evil. And of course, the second Trump picks JD Vance, in defiance of his biggest donors and many of his allies, which was an act of bravery for which he should get credit, the second he picked JD Vance, there was Lindsey Graham on Twitter saying, oh, my old friend JD Vance, I'm thrilled that he got the nod. They're all so false. They're just such phonies. I would respect Lindsey so much more if he would say, JD Vance? The guy's horrible. Trump made a huge mistake. At least he'd be being honest. But they're all frauds. Anyway, but the point is to see JD, let the rest of the world know how impressive he is, the emotional control he has over himself, remarkable, laudable, in my opinion, big time. He's just really smart. He's really normal. He's not weird. That's just not true. It's the opposite of true. You know who is weird? Obviously, is Tim Walz. I'm not going to go on about it, but that guy's weird. Let's be real. And anyway, I think JD Vance has been vindicated. And as someone who has sort of been flying the JD Vance flag for a while, I'm just thrilled. I never feel this way about politicians because I'm not a politician. I'm not friends with politicians. But in this one specific case, I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, Tim Walz has got, talk about not having control over one's emotions or one's body. Here's a little clip of him. Oh, boy.
Well, I was born in a small town.
He keeps bowing.
And live in a small town.
I'm just going to say, I don't know any man who behaves like that.
Come on. Come on. I'm just trying to control myself because I don't want to be mean, and also I don't want to say things I can't prove. But let's be real. Let me just say, not connected necessarily to Tim Walz, I'm never going to take another lecture about gay rights from these people. Like, oh, you hate gays and you keep them all in the closet or whatever. Any party, stop with the lectures about that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
If you're in general, if you're so for gay rights, and that would mean that any member of your party who's gay would feel free to say so in public and would not be pretending not to be gay. I'm just saying. You know what I mean? I hate the falseness of it. And by the way, last thing I'll say is I don't want to be mean, and I really think that people's private lives can be private if they want them to be private. I don't think you should have to announce everything you're into in public. I believe in privacy. I really do. And I don't think we should bother people on the basis of their private lives. I mean that. So, but they just push so hard. They're the ones who get into other people's private lives, lecturing your kids about sex and stuff that should be private. You know what I mean? Putting condoms on bananas. Yes. It's not just stay away. Let me have a private life. You can have a private life. Let's stop talking about other people's sex lives, other people's sexual orientations. Let's just all agree to shut up about that. Okay?
That's right.
I would be happy with that arrangement.
We don't care, and we don't want you talking to our children about it either.
Yeah, leave me alone.
Right, so with so little time left to go in this whole thing, Tucker, everybody wants to know who's going to win, and none of us really knows who's going to win. We have to wait for the only poll that matters, which is on Election Day or the 10 weeks thereafter, thanks to all the mail-in voting changes that the Democrats have pushed through. But, and obviously I know what you want to have happen, but what's your gut telling you right now?
My gut, I'm just too emotional about this stuff, and that's why I always get it wrong. I'll just refer to the publicly available and the private polling, which is pretty much out there. Because, people are paying close attention. Trump's ahead. There are only 7 states, the battleground states are 7 states, and Trump is ahead in 5 of them. And that's enough to win in the Electoral College. He's up in Pennsylvania. Now, again, we have 3 weeks from today to go. That could all change. I'm sure there'll be, a lot of change between now and then, and a lot of stuff that we don't expect will happen in 3 weeks. But as of today, Trump is ahead. And it's obvious in the behavior of the Harris campaign. She's talking about doing Joe Rogan. She's pretending that she's going to do Joe Rogan. If you think she's doing that voluntarily because she loves Joe Rogan, you know what I mean? I don't think so. She's not like a big MMA
glass in case
person.
Of emergency.
Exactly. So yeah, no, Trump is winning right now, and of course, I hope he does. And I happen to like Trump a lot personally, but even if I hated Trump, the machine can't win. The machine is anti-human. It's not about people, and that was obvious in the way they discarded Joe Biden, whom they claimed to love. They treated him like an object, and they inserted Kamala Harris as if she were an object. They don't care about Kamala Harris either, by the way. I'm not attacking her. She's merely the face of the party, of an anti-human party, and that party can't win, or else all of us are in trouble, including Democrats, by the way. It's not good for anybody. So that machine has to lose, and as of today, that machine is losing.
One interesting thing is because Trump is truly like the most vetted person in the world, and to your point, hides nothing. You know, he'll be the first to tell you all the things he did, probably with pride. I mean, is there any better example of that than when he was deposed in that E. Jean Carroll nonsense lawsuit, and the lawyer, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, is cross-examining him, and she's saying, and you said that you grabbed the women, by the private parts, and did you say that? And he was like, yes, that's the way it's been for hundreds of years. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it was the great. I know. So he'll tell you. He'll tell you everything. Anyway, my point is, he's vetted. He's vetted. Well, we know. And JD Vance, really, he's so young. He has very little to even vet. He too has written this very exposing memoir about his childhood. I mean, he took you all the way up through when he graduated from law school and went out to work for Peter Thiel. There's really nothing more to expose about JD Vance. Even when he was first named, the best they could come up with was like some passed out drunk photos at Yale Law School, which means he's normal. However, on the other side, because I'm just thinking about October surprise and things that could maybe change the trajectory of the race, all the risk seems to be built into the other side, Tucker, because what we really have on the other side is a totally unvetted pair, both of them.
Yes. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, but we learned in the last presidential cycle in 2020, that you could literally have the president's son's laptop become public with written documentary evidence of corruption by your candidate, and it wouldn't make a difference because it would be suppressed by the media. So, I don't know if anything that came out about Kamala Harris or Tim Walz right now would even filter down to swing voters. I'm not convinced. I think the real threat is in some bigger event, some society-wide event.
Oh, God.
The escalation of the two ongoing conflicts, in the Eastern Europe and the Middle East into some sort of regional or global war, something like that. That might change the outcome. But short of that, I'm not sure that there's time really to change the outcome. I mean, at this point, it's, yeah.
Yeah, if you're voting Trump, that's a good thing. I think he's on a good trajectory. I mean, if I were him, I wouldn't want to change much. Just got to keep pressing it. And obviously the get out the vote it's everything. I mean, it's just everything. I will say Sean Spicer was saying he did a deep dive on the Republicans get out the vote effort. And he said he slept like a baby that night. He felt very good about where things stood, which is the most optimistic I've heard any Republican on it. So that there was some comfort in that. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. By honoring your career calling, you can impact your family, friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of June, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. 4 years of crushing interest rates, runaway inflation, and reckless government spending. And who's paying the price? You are, my friend. You might have bills stacking up, debt collectors on your back. I've been there. And barely able to keep food on the table. Done with Debt can be a way out. They have developed new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt stands between you and your bill collectors. They can go head to head with these creditors, getting balances reduced, interest rates slashed, and penalties stopped. They create a plan to end your debt fast and put more cash in your pocket every month. And right now, Done with Debt is accepting new clients. But you need to act fast. Some credit relief programs expire. Before you even consider making another payment, consider a visit to donewithdebt.com or call 1-888-322-1054 right now. 1-888-322-1054. Speak with one of their debt relief strategists for free. Just go to donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. Now, before we go, forgive me for raising this, but our old pal Chris Wallace he decided it would be fun to take a shot at you. And since we've had fun talking about Chris Wallace in the past, I thought I'd bring it up. So how did this come out? I'm not sure. He was giving an interview. I'm not sure why he was even giving an interview about himself. Oh, he's on a book tour. He's on a book tour, Tucker. And the following exchange.
Did you write another book about
place.
soup or another topic?
I don't know. Soup. There was one. Mr. Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, about soup.
Okay. Yeah. Watch.
Tucker Carlson texted, "It should be. We devote our lives to building an audience, and they let Chris Wallace wreck it." Your response?
Well, I'm employed, and Tucker really isn't anymore, so that's part of my response.
Okay. I love that response so much. It just shows how clueless he is. We talked about this when I went on tour with you, to suggest, as he does there, that Chris Wallace has anywhere near the relevance or power. I know you won't say that and you don't see yourself that way about yourself, that you have, is just a lie. It's obtuse. It's a lie. It's an intentional deception. And he knows better. So it's his defensiveness, which I have to admit I kind of am enjoying. But the reason I want to ask you about it is I do want to ask you how it's feeling now, right? It's been more than a year. It's been, I think, by my calculation, a year and a half since you left Fox. You're out on your own.
Exactly.
You're everywhere. You're crushing it. The world tour has been super fun to watch. I've heard on more than one podcast that I listen to, many people view it either as this is Tucker's gearing up for 2028, or this is Tucker doing a sideline sort of roadshow to help Trump. Maybe I'm just dumb, Tucker. I think it's in the middle and it's just you wanting to get back out there and see some of your fans and talk about the news and, take your show on the road and exercise your sea legs. In any event, comments or thoughts on any and all of that?
Well, I would just say of the tour, I have the least complicated motives. I'm not a complicated person at all. I wish I was. I just kind of wanted to get out and see the country and have fun. You were unbelievable. I was saying to your producer that the night with you was really a highlight. That was incredible. But I've loved it. And poor Chris Wallace. I look at Chris Wallace and I think, I really hope by the time I'm 80 that I'm just with my grandkids. It's a privilege to be able to talk about politics and things you think matter. And, it's all great. But if that's the most important thing in your life, if that's more important than your grandchildren or your dogs or, bird hunting, I don't know. Your priorities may be out of whack. I just don't want to be doing this when I'm 80 or however old Chris is, 85, 88, whatever his age is. So there's that. I'm not being mean. I'm being sincere. It's good to get off the stage at some point, and I really do plan to. But I'm as happy as I've ever been. I've loved it. I've loved being able to say exactly what I think without worrying about it. I mean, Fox didn't really control me very well anyway, but now I really don't have a boss, and that's wonderful. I love seeing things, traveling wherever I want to go, talking to any person I want to. If Chris Wallace doesn't like it, fine, that's great. You know what I mean? It's such a happier life. And the last thing I'll say is I love how real independent media is. I love that when you say something on your show, people text me about it. Or, all the people I know who've been expelled from the dying media machine, who've wound up continuing in media, are more influential than the colleagues they left behind. I never thought that would actually happen. Rogan, whatever you think of Rogan, I just always want to say Rogan created single-handedly, I think, this genre, the podcast. I can't believe it actually worked. And I hope he gets credit. Even people who don't like Rogan, I think, should give him credit for truly pioneering what we're doing now. And so I just absolutely love it. I couldn't love it more.
Not only did Rogan build it, he built the whole highway.
Yes.
But you never saw or see Rogan doing a hit on Fox or MS or a Sunday show or in a magazine spread. He is the opposite of self-promotional. So every single audience member he has, and it's huge, he earned just by being great, just by word of mouth.
Yes.
In an era where nobody was really coming over here, which is one of the reasons why it's so impressive.
It's incredible. And he devotes all this energy to things he loves purely because he loves them. Whether I love him or you love him or not, it's stand-up comedy, bow hunting, MMA. I mean, he spends like half of his life just pursuing things that he thinks are fun and cool because he thinks they're fun and cool. And so he's a whole person. That's kind of the point I was making about Kamala. She's missing out on the purpose of life, which is to enjoy other people. It's not to accumulate money or power. It's to enjoy other people, to serve other people, to use the creative powers that God gave you at birth for something interesting and good. Make something beautiful. Use your talents. And I see Rogan doing that. Again, whether they're my interests or yours or not, it doesn't matter. They're his. And he's fully living them. And it's a model of life that I really appreciate. So more people should do that.
Well, maybe Kamala will go on Joe Rogan. Maybe she'll bring Tim Walz, and maybe Joe Rogan can show him a thing or two about how to hunt, how to load a gun, how to kill a pheasant. Something I know you can do too. You and my husband, Doug, love to kill the birds.
Yeah, amen. Yes, I'm doing it this afternoon.
He needs a little help. It's a pleasure as always. Don't forget, everybody, you've got to go to tuckercarlson.com, find The Art of the Surge. It's gripping. It's so well done. It's very impressive. Justin, as I understand it, really only had his iPhone and one camera guy, and it looks like a huge, expensive production. Beautifully done. Thank you so much.
You're the best. Thank you, Megyn. I appreciate it.
To be continued. And we'll see all of you tomorrow.